think big data is what it turned out to be when we first coined the term, which was about a decade ago. We were referring to the fact that the amount of information in the world had ballooned to such a degree that it outstripped the tools necessary for handling the computation, so that researchers had to innovate at the level of hardware and software just to run their analyses. From that time, things like Google came out with MapReduce. The open source variant was Hadoop that people are talking about. Also around that time, around 2004, 2005, a technique in artificial intelligence called machine learning that didn't work very well, worked a little, started to work very well indeed. And the reason why was not because the algorithms got better or the memory was faster, but because we threw more data at the problem. Right? More data got us where we needed to go. So there, the term big data was simply a reaction to the fact that we had data processing before, and now we needed a new term. Today it looks different. It's simply applying statistics and mathematics to lots of areas of life that have been done by humans and have not had that sort of quantitative bent. But tomorrow, big data is going to adapt new meaning because it's going to adapt new technologies to it. Already, when we talk about machine learning and we talk about deep learning, which is a part of it, we're really talking about big data, and we use those terms interchangeably. Big data is going to have impacts on every industry, and the impact is going to be different, but also the same in certain areas. We can think about it in terms of, say, publishing. We've published books before, we will still publish books, but what happens when a book goes onto a digital platform like a tablet is you can now watch how the book is read by the reader. You know if they read it all very quickly or in very small little chunks. You know if they give up after the third chapter or if they read it to the end. You know if they're reading it while they're on a train and commuting, or stationary in an armchair on a Saturday. You might know their demographics, if they're male or female, and you might want to tailor your marketing or the production of that book based on who the customer is or how it's going to be consumed. Look, I'm a writer, so I care very much about that. If I knew that lots of my readers sped through one chapter really quickly, I'd want to look at the chapter and say, what was going on there? What really worked? If I knew that half of my readers gave up at chapter 7 at the same place, I'll look at it and say, what needs to happen? Maybe that wasn't a good example and it was too convoluted. I had to pull that out and I'd change it. We're at the ability where we can do this today, but we never could do it before. So we don't have the practices or the institutions to do it. All industries are facing the fact that they now can watch how their product is interacting in the marketplace. They can adapt it to the needs of the consumer as well as their values and their judgment and do new things that they never could before. That's the key. Big data isn't just about having more data, more of the same thing that we've always had. Big data is about doing things new, better, and different. Big data challenges what we know and how we know it. And we can think about it across all areas of society, and one, most important, is probably healthcare. It would surprise people to know that if they go into a medical situation, go to a clinic or a hospital, they're going to find that the doctors and the nurses will attach lots of wires and tubes and sensors to them. It'll collect reams of data, and you can actually see it on a monitor, and pretty much all of that data is thrown out after the treatment like a bloody syringe. This is like medieval barbary, like bloodletting, and the reason why is because some of the most valuable aspects of patient care, the data around what works when, under what condition, simply gets washed away. We can empathize with medical practitioners. A decade ago, it was impossible to collect all the data. It would cost a fortune just to be able to store it all and then reanalyze it. But today, most of those constraints have gone away. Not all, but most of them have. And you could imagine that if the healthcare services were to actually collect all the data around a patient treatment, and then they were able to aggregate it and analyze it and find out what worked when, with whom, we'd be able to produce better outcomes and probably lower the cost of treatment as well. We're not doing that yet today, but that is where things are headed. It will take a long time. In the case of healthcare, it will take a particularly long time. People are very wary. There's privacy implications to it. The fact is that the findings will only be correlations and not causality. And can we trust them? But the key thing is this. We are in a world where we are actually making decisions based on judgment, but only using small little snapshots of data. We can now collect a lot more data to make better decisions, and we can even automate them. It's a new era of empiricism, face of humanity and relativity, if you will, and reality. And in that sense, what's to play for is almost endless. City planning is a great place where we're actually going to see big data make huge inroads, and we already have, in fact. So I know of one municipality that has looked at cell phone data in terms of commuters so that they know how to extend the public transport. So they looked at the origin of where people woke up, and you can make a prediction of where people are sleeping based on when the cell phone is stationary between the hours of like midnight and 6 a.m., right? So you see where they originate. You see where they connect in, their first check-in to public transport. You see where they check out of public transport, and then you see where they work, where they actually go, right? Everyone might be leaving this bus stop, but they have to walk a quarter of a mile over there to actually get to the workplace, right? And you didn't know that before because you just saw them get off that bus stop. The fact is the bus didn't go there. It could have gone in lots of different directions, but it didn't go there. So you make a prediction of where the workplace is based on when the cell phone is, relatively stationary in a small area between the hours of 9 and 5. Great, you now know this. So this particular municipality was able to know that we should extend the bus service from this point all the way over there, and we're going to get a boost to our GDP, of economic growth. People are going to it's going to be more convenient. People are going to get to work on time. People are going to work more. They're going to be better employees because they're going to be more rested rather than having to work there. It's not like these techniques are only in developed countries and places like London and New York. The example I'm telling you from is from Dakar, Senegal. So big data is coming everywhere. And it's not simply going to happen in developed countries, it's happening in developing countries as well. So it's even in places that suffer from poverty, we can actually learn a lot from how people are interacting. And if we take the information, we can uncover new insights. One of the best examples is using mobile phones. And there what we found is we were able to track with something called a call data record where people are going and where people are coming, and we can find out where there's incidences of malaria. We did this in Kenya, and we've done this in Namibia, right? So take a map, look at the data, look at where the problems are, look at where the people are, and we uncovered something new about malaria that we didn't realize before when it was based in these countries, that there's these sinks of malaria and there's these sources of malaria, and that they're different. You might have an outbreak of malaria in Nairobi, but it turns out that very few of those people got it in Nairobi. They got it somewhere else. They got around Lake Victoria, right? We were finally able to see this and quantify the degree they were able to do that. And now we know that when we want to target our intervention, to have an anti-malaria intervention of public health warnings or maybe offering free nets, don't do it in Nairobi, even though that's where all the malaria is. It's because people are coming into Nairobi sick. And that's when the symptoms manifest themselves. Do it on the pathway from one of the transport network ways from Lake Victoria to Nairobi, and you're going to be better off preventing the spread of malaria. So one of the most interesting aspects of big data is that the information that a company either has or is able to get is becoming a vital corporate asset. In fact, one of the most precious aspects of a company is not necessarily the production of what they're doing, but the data around what they do that they can then create a new revenue stream around. Let me give you an example. So UPS, the large deliverer, has 70,000 vehicles in North America, right? So they put sensors into all of the engine blocks, and by doing so, they're able to actually monitor what is the sound and vibration and temperature of a healthy engine versus one that's about to fail. So they know before a breakdown that an engine needs work, and so they don't put that truck out on the field that day, or they have the person make an unscheduled maintenance stop prior to the breakdown so they can fix it and put it on its way. Before that, you'd have to have the vehicle by the side of the road, big headache because packages aren't being delivered and they're not being picked up either. Great. Now, what if UPS said, we have so many vehicles, we could license this data not to FedEx, they're our direct competitor, but to a taxi service, right? Or another delivery service that's not a direct competitor to us, it's a source of revenue. What if we found out, because all of our vehicles and engines are from the same company, that actually we now know under what conditions of humidity and temperature or time or season or time of day that there's most likely to have a problem with this engine? Let's license this information back to Ford, back to General Motors. General Motors would really be interested to know that in certain meteorological conditions like humidity and rain, right? That in fact their engines perform poorly and there's a problem and they could actually address that problem. But they don't know that because they can't measure their vehicles, or if they do, they can't measure it as well as UPS can out in the field. In that respect, the data has become a vital corporate asset. And for a very smart company to put a business executive, not an IT guy, but a business executive around the collection and stewardship and the salesmanship of that data, the opportunities are huge. You know, what's holding companies back from doing this is the mindset, is the fact that this is all so new that by the time you get into the hierarchy and you're actually a senior executive, what you're trying to do is probably eliminate risk, not take on really new, ambitious projects that might fail. Because if you're a senior middle manager, what you really want is the golden ring in the CEO's suite. And no one is going to hit you over the head over a project that you didn't do that didn't fail. You know, on the other hand, if you actually do a project and it craters, your career might crater as well. So it's really about mindset and it's about ambition. And that's another reason why I think we're going to see the most important developments come from startups who are willing to take that risk. And the way that that'll be implemented is by really smart larger companies like GE or Siemens or Philips scouring the universe of these startups, of these big data startups, and saying, I'll take this, this, and this. I don't have to take the risk initially to see if it's going to work or not. I'll pay a premium for that company for them to take the risk, because 100 will die as one will get $100 million, and I'll buy it, and I'll buy it early, not too late. The biggest advances of big data is not going to come from the public sector. It's probably going to come from the private sector. It's going to come from small and nimble companies that can tap the data. And the reason why is what you need in big data most of all is data. And in the public sector, there's already all of these rules around usage and collection and holding the data. There's a lot of agencies where the data in one agency is very valuable, the data in another agency is very valuable, but they actually don't cooperate to share it, to unlock the value of it, and maybe you actually need a third institution to do it because it's not part of their remit, right? A great example of that is educational data. What works and what doesn't for student performance, right? You would think schools are interested in that. They're not. Schools are run by administrators, and the whole idea of a state school system is to make life easy for the factory owner, for the administrators, and for the teachers. Student outcome, we like it. But you know what? Next year there's just going to be another batch and we'll send them through the system, right? Teacher, leave this kid alone. It could be different. So what you're going to see is not in the state system, but in the private sector, in this case, private schools, will apply big data techniques to education and will unlock some of these advances. And when the private sector has the fuel of incentive and commercial incentive to do really well and boost performance, whether it's of students or factory machinery or of targeted advertising, suddenly then the state sector is going to wake up, take notice, and adopt those technologies too.